how do you shock your audience? How do you become unique or do something that's going to draw attention? My father was a priest. So we had a lot of church fates and all this sort of stuff. So I was like thrown into the kind of church scene. I know it's hard to believe. So, I would act, and I would actually put on my own stage plays and, build my own sets and, put on performances for, that community. First professional short film was The Huntsman. And this was a stroke of good luck, really. At the time I was studying Taekwondo, and my instructor and his son, actually, David No, he was cast as a lead in what was back then, which was a Swinburne graduate film. But on the crew was Jamie Blanks, who's directed Urban Legend Valentine. He was the DOP. And David himself went on to act in The Matrix, I think 2 and 3. So this was a kind of really powerful group of guys. David had this really kind of elongated fight scene with a lot of different things going on, and in one part he wanted the side splits, so he knew me from the class and he said, I've seen you do splits, can you be in this film with us? And I said, yeah, sure. And he said, do you act? And I said, yeah, actually I do. So it was kind of, it was two kind of, I guess, aces coming together. Again, it was kind of funny because I'd been studying stand-up comedy, believe it or not. And I was studying privately with a place called the Humoversity.
I just come back from Paris.
Really? Wow.
Nice place. Lots of French people.
But having that comic study and still doing a bit of martial arts kind of led me to this film, Rodeo Samurai, where, again, the director wanted an actor that was funny or understood comedy, but also had a little bit of martial arts prowess because it was about a bunch of guys dressed up as samurais. So that was an independent feature, and I was there for most of the auditions. I was doing the response reads for people. It was a huge production. I mean, we saw everyone in town at the time. It was literally hundreds of people, if not thousands, that auditioned for it. So I was lucky because I landed second lead. Look, it was big at the time. I mean, Brooke Satchwell's in it, and she'd won Australia's most popular teenager that year. Dennis Cord was in it. So you kind of had like a powerhouse from Home and Away and a powerhouse from Neighbours, which gave us some legs. And they were actually really nice people. They weren't kind of, pretentious as you might think they are in the independent realm, because I'd only come from independent stuff and hadn't really worked with big names at that stage, not until then, or people that I would say are distinguished names or recognised. So that gave us some legs, but it was a grueling shoot. It was really like an apprenticeship because it was 32 days straight. Back then it was super 16mm multicam, so it was a really big effort and task to try and pull off. Because this is back in 1999, 2000. Back then, the industry, there was a lot of scrutiny, there was a lot of competition, it was a lot harder to be recognised for your work. There were kind of, from my perspective, there was a small group that kind of said yes or no to you kind of, making it as such. And they didn't like some of what we were doing. And unfortunately, some of the crew were still not amateur, but they were still learning. They were still finding themselves. It was a young crew. So we came out with this, really expensive movie, which we loved, but didn't get as much support from, the film bodies here or, the Film Finance Corporation, for example. They weren't really that into it. But independently and, on the street, it was huge. So Queen of the Damned came about. That was really, through my agent. After I'd done a couple of films and I got an A-list agent, I was able to, be taken seriously enough to go into some of these types of auditions. So it was an audition, and they initially asked me to be a stand-in, and a lot of people were saying no. And I knew that no matter what I did, I'd be making friends straight away, and it'd probably lead to something, so I was very careful. So I said yes. And then I was doubling for one of the vampires, one of the leads. And then I guess as a reward, I got the featured extra part as well. You go to the cinema and you see yourself on 35mm, It's an incredible experience. When I was younger, I knew I wanted to do this thing, and I didn't know what that thing was until I knew it was in film, but I wasn't sure which role. So I purposely jumped into just about every role you can do, so through film school, etc. I've done sound, I've done camera, I've worked as a camera assistant for Channel 9, in fact. I'm a casting agent now. So my point is I kind of dabbled, but I knew in the back of my head, if you want to be a really strong director, you need to actually understand all of the roles. Because if something goes wrong on set, you need to be able to know how to fix it. With acting, I guess that was one thing that I was always pretty good at. I wouldn't say I'm the best, no way, but pretty good. And it helped me to get onto the sets that I wanted to get onto and do that experience and do that research. But I knew I wanted to direct, and I did I attempted to make my first full-length film when I was 19. And that's a movie called The Hidden. Yeah, I don't know if you remember, there was a place called the Melting Pot Cafe, which used to be in Collingwood. And this was kind of like a predecessor to Tropfest. These guys were way ahead of their game. And they used to have independent films screened there, and they loved The Hidden. They took it on board, and it played to a packed house. As a very young guy, 19, it was a bit overwhelming for me, and I didn't really know. I wasn't a man yet, so I didn't know what it meant. I just thought, oh wow, everyone loves my film, but who are these people? Film school, it's one of those things. I applied to get into the VCA School of Film and Television. I kept getting rejected. I realised it was because they were after a certain type of material that wasn't really me. I found Footscray Film School. When I found Footscray, though, they weren't advertising. It was a very kind of cult in-house thing where it was word of mouth. And it was only a 2-year diploma. And I thought, well, I'll go there because I want to actually meet like-minded people. On the first day, the teachers were very smart. They said, hands up anybody who's got a screenplay. And I was like, I'm ready to go. I've got, a whole bunch here. But there were many people that didn't. And they said, okay, anyone who hasn't put their hand up, get out. And I was like, whoa, wow, why is that? And then I realized because she then said, well, if you don't have a screenplay and you're at film school, you mustn't be serious. But I loved that place so much that when I finished the second year, I didn't have enough. I wanted to keep going, and I'd done some shorts, but I wanted to shoot my first feature. So I said, what do I do? Can I re-enroll? So I did, but then my teachers used me as an example, and we actually went to the State Training Board and we got approval to turn it into a 4-year advanced diploma, and I pioneered that. So in the third year, I was on my own, and then when my friends found out about it, they all re-enrolled. So in the fourth year, they all came back, and I had my posse again.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now. The hour of our death.
You know as well as I do, the way he's been locking himself up, what he's done to the Gain server, this time something is different.
It is very important that you tell me exactly what's been going on here. And we'll be explicit.
But The Strange Game of Hide and Seek, which is a 30-minute film, is my film school graduate movie, but in third year.
That's not my master's voice.
So what happened was we had a production company called Alliance, and they just absolutely loved this film to death. When I played it at one of my own festivals at the time on Swanston Street, the Capitol Theatre, I had a festival for a few years running called Out of the Lights. It was a horror film festival. And I screened that and they came along. It was a huge night, actually. It was a packed house. It was 500 plus people there. In fact, when I went to that screening myself, I got, I don't know if I got a train or a cab into the city, but I saw this crowd, going from Flinders Street up to the Capitol. And I was like, oh, wow, something big must be on tonight. And it was the queue to my friggin' festival. I was really shocked. And so they were there and they loved it and they picked it up. But the amazing thing about that is exactly what you said. It was a short film getting a major release. That had never really happened in this country.
Is it possible to find some form of redemption from this terror?